PPD has returned to competition in Dota 2, leaving behind his role as CEO of EG. He has formed a team with 2 European Dota 1 veterans, and also longtime teammates and friends, in Pajkatt and Misery, and 2 new school players, one proven and one unproven, in Xi and CCnC. Now they've been picked up by the OpTic org, which I think is interesting because OpTic has not had any MOBA games at all, and the teams that they have picked up have typically done really well, which is also interesting. They picked up sort of a decent middle-of-the-road Counter-Strike team, and the team really grew under OpTic. I'm not sure how significant that is, but I think it's a pretty good org to play for in terms of the support they give you, and I've heard nothing but good things about the guys and the owners, and I think they have a house you can go to and train at if you want. So a very, very good situation for the players, a very good org to play for. OpTic was founded in 2006, 11 years ago. It was founded by someone called Crew. The leadership was then given over to someone called John 3S, and then to someone many of you probably know called Hector Hex Rodriguez. Their first YouTube video was uploaded in 2009, and this is significant because the team is very well known for its social media presence, its YouTube presence, and its strong connection to the fans. I think they have a lot of their COD players do shit like walk around with, those little GoPro things, walk around the house. They do all sorts of wacky things. That's how they build their brand. That's a lot of their income. A lot of their revenue is from YouTube. They have like I think they have 1 million subscribers. They have all their players doing like vlogging and that sort of thing. It's a very different sort of model than something like EG, which is just like a lot of monetary sponsorships, just going to tournaments and wearing a lot of stuff on your jerseys and holding up cans of Monster, and it's different. It's very different. So their first YouTube video being uploaded in 2009 is significant. They've been at it for 8 years now, so they've really, really built it up over the last 8 years. Their sponsors are Brisk, Turtle Beach, Scuff Gaming, which is for controllers for Xbox and PS4 and things like that, I think. Turtle Wax, which is for cars, and Chipotle. So these are some pretty serious sponsors. Brisk, this is like lemonade, nice tea and shit, and Chipotle, these, yeah, good sponsors, boys. They are often compared to FaZe. I would consider them almost like Coke and Pepsi, sort of for the supermassive COD franchises, if you will. They have a very, very similar sort of business plan, very similar marketing. They're very similar in general. You got red and green, they got YouTube videos, they got the house, they got the crazy fans, the Call of Duty. Very similar. The results of this team so far, speaking of the Dota 2 team now, they have qualified to the Summit 8, beating out Digital Chaos 3-0 in the Grand Finals. They did fairly well to do so, I think. It's not a sure thing that they were going to beat DC at all. DC's in decent form right now. It's arguable to say if they've gotten better or worse by losing Dubu. That will play itself out in time. They were losing in Game 1 pretty heavily, and they had a pushing lineup. Never a good thing to be losing with a pushing lineup. I don't know how many of you guys watching have played Dota 2 before, or those of you that have played like a lot of Captain's Mode, maybe some scrims or anything like that. But if you pick like a 5-man, like a pushing lineup, really heavy pushing lineup, you fall behind by, 10 kills, maybe you lose your Tier 1 towers. It is unbelievably hard to come back and win a game like that. So I think that really speaks to the character of this team. Good job by all the players, to the leadership of PPD. I think that's a great job to win that Game 1. Game 2, more of a throw by DC than a real win by OpTic, and then Game 3 was just total slaughter. Really not worth mentioning Game 3. It was pretty gross. They got second place in the AMD Sapphire Dota Pit qualifier, losing 2-3 to Immortals. They did quite well in Game 5, and they were quite ahead, up 9-3 in the kills. And they had taken the bottom Tier 2 tower of Radiant. They were playing on the Dire, and they had taken Radiant's bottom tier 2 tower at minute 13. And this is very significant because it cuts off Radiant's access to their own jungle, and it's sort of like playing Risk and taking a little corner of their jungle as your own, because if the only way they can access their own jungle is from their mid lane and TPing to their mid shrine, then you have your bottom tier 1 and you can TP to that and your bottom shrine, and you can sort of farm these camps here. It sort of becomes like your territory, right? So it's very, very significant, and that early in the game. For the whole rest of the game, you get that advantage, that farm. Very hard to lose from that position, and boy did they lose. And it was really rough. They took a horrible team fight. About 5 minutes later, CCnC got ganked by 5 heroes, got picked off for free, whatever. And then they just decided to fight 4v5, and they got massacred, wasn't close, and turned the whole game around. And then the exact reverse of what I just said happened. The Radiant team took the Dire top tier 2 tower, does the exact same thing if you're Radiant. And they lost. They lost that game. They failed to qualify for Dota Pit. A very, very disappointing result if you're a fan of OpTic or PPD or anything like that. I think you can chalk it up to them being a new team. I absolutely think you can chalk it up to them being a new team. But it's still a disappointing result, and I still think they could have done better there. I think that's a game that they could have won. In the ESL 1 Hamburg North American qualifier, they got top 8. There were only 12 teams, so in the like the closed qualifier portion, top 8, not so great. They lost 2-1 to Complexity. Moving on, Star Ladder I-League North American qualifier, they got 2nd place, but they did lose twice to Complexity, 0-2 in the upper bracket and 0-2 again in the grand finals. So that's tough. And in the games, I watched both games for the finals. And this is tough because they lost to 3 of the same 5 heroes in both games. Wisp, Tiny, Warlock. So it's kind of a double-edged sword because you like it and you don't like it. When you lose against something and then you don't ban any of the heroes you just lost against and you lose against it again. Because on the one hand, it shows a lot of confidence, like, oh yeah, we're better than these guys. No, I don't give a shit, we'll beat them. Oh yeah, pick Wisp again. No, I dare you, motherfuckers, we'll beat you. It shows a lot of confidence at the same time, and it looks really cool if you win. You know, it's great if you win. Oh wow, they gave them the same heroes they just got stomped by, and they got stomped, believe me, in Game 1. That's an important note. Stomped in Game 1 by Wisp Tiny. They give the same thing, Wisp Tiny, and the Warlock was in both games too. Give it to them, they get stomped again. So, would have looked really cool if it worked. Didn't work. I'd like to, you know, I do give some credit to PPD in terms of the confidence he's showing there, but at the same time, you know, when you lose, when you pull that and you lose, you get a little bit of criticism as well. So I do think that's worth noting. And then the other qualifier was the Perfect World qualifier, which they forfeited. They had played 1 game and they had won, and then they forfeited. So moving on to PPD, he is the most important player on this team. He is the most notable one. He has the best results. He is the captain. He does the in-game drafting. And he is the player I will talk about first. He is 25 years old. He is American from the USA. He is a former Han player, and for a brief time in Han, he was even teammates with Zai. Although I think they spent most of their Han careers on different teams. That's my understanding. He played for Trademark Esports and Complexity Han. I believe he spent more time on Complexity Han, but again, I'm not a Han guy, so please correct me if I'm wrong about that. Not the best player in Han by any stretch. There were certainly other guys that you would say were above him, Swindle Melons being one of them. Swindle Melons was like one of the real kings of Han. And Limp and Chessie and these guys, you know, PPD wasn't really that guy in Han. He was really good, and he even did take home some award in 2012, HanCast Awards of 2012, Best Support Player, Franzi. That used to be his name. Franzi, and then Peter Pandam. Then he shortened it to PPD. It was called Franzi back then. He took home an award, Best Support Player 2012. Like, okay, it's clearly good. Not very good, Best Support Player 2012. I mean, really, really good. But he wasn't the best. Even though that, I know what that says, but throughout the scope of his career and his results and the teams he played on and everything, when you put it all into context, like, he wasn't the best. So, him being the absolute, having the level of results that he's had in Dota 2 is, I think, a bit surprising when you look at what he's done in Han. More than a bit surprising. really. He has an abrasive personality, and he's a controversial figure in general. There are many clips of him being rude in pubs, and supposedly he was worse in Han. There are many, many people who would tell you that. They will step up and say, oh yeah, no, the guy was a real dickhead in Han. Slowly, things have gotten better over the course of Dota 2, but the impression I get is he still seems to be that same person, sort of underneath. He's just, you know, he's more mature, he's older, he's better at hiding it, he knows how to act professional, but my impression is he's still the same guy, you know, he's still the same guy. Maybe a little bit less so, and a little bit older, a little bit wiser, but he's still PPD. He is that guy. And I love it. I think it's great. It doesn't bother me at all. You know, a lot of people, they get really upset about things like that. You know, if he, you know, who cares? He's captain of EG, he's playing a pub game with some guy, the guy's playing like shit, the guy's bad. He's, you know, tell the guy, hey guy, you're fucking bad. You suck. Like, I don't know. I think it's, you know, obviously we don't want everyone to be like that, but having a few token guys like that, I think it's actually quite interesting, especially in professional sports as well. The professional sports in which there are no guys like that are actually quite boring. So it's actually nice to have a guy like that in PPD. Yeah, that's who he is. He's PPD. You know, he is that. Although maybe it's affected his professional career. You know, it's one thing when he's doing it in pubs, but has it affected his professional career? Because we've seen some pretty unprecedented shit go down. Multiple times, people have left in the middle of seasons before TI to join new teams, Team Secret. Now, you could say, oh yeah, you know, like Artur said, oh, I was just at the old hospital and I wanted to go to a new one. Sure thing, man. Sure thing. And then again, a second time, the same thing happens. Leaves for Secret a second time. This, you know, first time CCnC, second time Artesian Universe. And then after they get eliminated from TI6, after the loss to DC, Sumail straight up, point blank says, I will not play with you anymore. I'm going to find a new team. He tells the guy, he sits all the guys down on EG, says, I'm not going to play with PPD anymore. I will not do it. I will join a new team. And then they say, whoa, 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 buddy, let's talk about this. And they work something out, because now PPD, Fear, and Universal have ownership stakes in the team, and it's actually beneficial to them in some way to have Sumail stay on the team, even if it means PPD stay. And they all work it out. They decide the most mutually beneficial thing is for Sumail to stay. But anyway, we never really know what goes on behind closed doors, and all you can do is speculate. But what we can speculate on is the things that we can see, and the things we can, you know, the things that we can observe. And what I can observe is a very well documented thing now that's been come out and talked about, and there's interviews about it, and you can go and look. It's fairly recent development that's been made public, but it is out there, with Sumail giving the team an ultimatum that he wouldn't play with PPD, which is why PPD moved to the CEO in the first place. And 2 separate times, RTZ leaving the team, and 1 time Zai leaving the team, and 1 time Universe leaving the team. This is just, I can't stress enough how unprecedented this is for a Tier 1 team in the twice, you know, not with Sumail, we'll hold that away, but in the middle of a season, halfway through the year, you know, TI's coming up. It's not really that smart, you know. And these guys aren't stupid, they know. It's not that smart to do it middle of the year, but they do, and it's very shocking, you know. I think the RTZ one was earlier in the course of the year, the first time, but RTZ and Zai, I think they did it like October, November, that sort of thing. But the second time was not. The second time was like halfway through the year. So we have this pattern of players leaving. An established team, a good team, a team that's getting results, it doesn't really make sense, you know, unless there's some real problem internally with BPD. Players not wanting to play with them. You know, like, it doesn't matter how brilliant of a captain you are, how brilliant of a drafter you are, how good of a support player you are. If you're really good at your role and everything, if people don't want to play with you, man, what are we really doing here? So, you know, it's all speculation. Aside from the Sumail shit, which is not speculation, that is out there. He really did say that. Anyway, so he retires, then he moves back to play. He I think that was a very mature move by PPD to step down and say, okay, we're going to keep Sumail. This is the best thing for EG. I'm going to be the CEO. But, he's a player at heart. He's a little too young to be doing, boardroom meetings and all that boring stuff. He wants to be a player. He's going to keep doing that until he's unable to anymore, which is typically the reason people retire, because they are no longer able to compete, and it's only then that they go on to do, start a restaurant or get into business, or they do those things, and they're not horrible things, but they do them because they can't compete anymore. It's not some sort of calculated, oh, I'll leave in my prime. There's a reason people don't quit in their prime, and it's because it's just not done, and you don't want to. Why would you? Anyway, so the very beginning of PPD's career, he played for a team called, the very beginning he played in Han for a team called Trademark Esports, and then Complexity Han under the name Franzi. And then we moved on to Dota 2, and he played in a team called Super Strong Dinosaurs with Come With Me and Snaking. It's not a real notable team, no great results. I think Zai was on that team too, actually. And then he played mostly just in in-house leagues, kind of kept a low profile. A lot of Vouch leagues, a lot of NEL. He wasn't a very high-profile player. His switch over from Han players didn't get a lot of respect at that time. None of them had ever had success in Dota 2, right? The thought was you had to have played Dota 1 to be a good Dota 2 player. That was it. There was no middle ground, because all the players that we had seen having these success at TI were Dota 1 players. Alliance, Loda, and Ake, Dota 1 players. TI 2, IG, all the boys on that team, Ferrari, and these guys, these are Dota 1 players. TI 1, Navi, that was a copy-paste Dota 1 team. They kept the same roster and just started grinding Dota 2. So the school of thought was very strict, Han players were considered, they were very low on the totem pole, just above League of Legends players in terms of the amount of respect they got. So PPD wasn't really, neither Zai was really that, not notable. They played NEL, and they actually played quite well. Some people were starting to catch on, Arteezy and Fear and Demon and Jo, and these guys would stream, and they would be in the games. They didn't stream themselves, and they would stream, and these guys would watch. And, oh yeah, these guys, they're playing, but they just sort of blended in. I want to say they didn't really stand out in any meaningful way, but I guess that's why most of us are just spectators. We didn't know what to look for, because Fear, Universe, and Arteezy decided they were willing to make a team with PPD and Zai, and so that's what happened. The team Sad Boys was formed. And it was quite shocking. It was quite shocking, because this was the first time that Han players were going to be playing a major role in a new team. This was the first real shifting of the guard. EG, up until that point, had been nothing but old-school Dota 1 players. We'd had Playmate at one point in EG. We'd had Pajkatt. We'd had Misery. We'd had Fear. We'd had Demon. We'd had all these guys. And Male. And we'd had just disappointing results all the way around. And so this was a real shifting of the guard to the new school. Now we had Arteezy, we had PPD, we had Zai, and we had a little bit of old school, Fear and Universe. But this was a this is a big change. So I can't stress enough how big and surprising this change was. And of course, we didn't know they were going to be EG at the time, although a lot of people did speculate as soon as the team was formed, oh yeah, this is the new EG team. They just need to, not suck for a few weeks, then EG's going to, it was pretty heavily speculated. It wasn't a big secret. Anyway, so they start off, and right away, we get to see how unique PPD's drafting style is. Early on, back then, I think some of the most popular supports right after TI3, the most popular supports might have been Visage and Nyx Assassin, and Rubik and Sand King, heroes like this. These really aggressive heroes, these gankers, these were extremely... Wisp, of course, but that hero was broken and often banned. These heroes were extremely popular right after TI3, and PPD just flipped that completely. He was a huge fan of defensive supports, and this was not something we had typically seen. And he would go ahead and draft 1, sometimes 2 defensive supports in the same lineup, And it was all because he had Arteezy as his mid player. And he would typically try to draft Arteezy as the most late game greedy hero in the whole server. You know, of all the 10 guys, he'd be the most late game focused hero, whether that's a Shadow Fiend or an OD or a Naga. Liked those heroes a lot. Could be something else too, like a TA. And then he would pick Treant Protector or Dazzle or Omni Knight. And these heroes, we didn't see them a whole lot. You know, we did the odd time, but they weren't this. The way they were played was different, and Treant and Omni were not that popular. And he would just pick them. Like, he would just go Treant in the first phase, Omni in the first phase. He would just go Omni OD. He would just go Treant SF. He would open his drafts like that, and it was very, very interesting to watch. And then they won like that. And he always loved to have heroes that could save other heroes early on in Sad Boys. And I would call this like the Sad Boys style of drafting. And it carried them all the way through to TI. And there's one game, even on OpTic now, you can see he likes to pick Winter Wyvern for himself, a lot of hero that's maybe not as popular, you know, especially after EG sort of famously lost with it, got knocked out with Crit playing the Winter Wyvern. You know, sort of a stupid reason, but a lot of people are actually like not wanting to pick Winter Wyvern because of that. PPD is like picking it for himself. Although he's picking a lot of push strats. That sort of seems to be where he gets his jollies right now. But another thing I would like to talk about is he really likes ambiguous picks. That's been something all the way from the very beginning, from the first few games of Sad Boys, all the way until TI6. His last games that we've seen at TI6, he has always shown this trend of he loves to take a hero in the first phase, and it can be a core or a support. And that is something that he has always done, and I believe he will always continue to do. He tries to identify one hero in a patch. At first it was Naga Siren for TI4 and TI5, and then for TI6 it was Mirana, and he will take that hero in the first phase and try to build a draft around it. And he tries to say, you know, okay, this hero could be support, it could be core, we can run it in a lot of different ways, we can do it in a dual lane in the off lane, we can do it as the 5 positions, we have 4 or the 5 support in the safe lane, it can go mid, you know, we can do a lot of things with this hero. And the other team, of course, knows all this as well. So the first tournament that he played, the very first tournament, was called the MLG TKO Team Knockout, and his team played. And they were against Liquid. It was Liquid versus Sad Boys. I don't know if this was their first match, but it was one of their first games. And this is a really great game to watch in general. You can sort of see the birth of the modern EG. And they're against Liquid. Now, to put this into context, Liquid has just gotten top 8 at TI3. This is the best result by a North American team ever at a TI. Liquid is considered the best North American team, and it's not even close. They are the best. They are the gods, you know, they are the ones who have taken us to the promised land. And PPD goes in and he gives them Bat, Wisp, Tiny. Now, I can't stress enough, this is right after TI3, these heroes, Bat, Wisp, Tiny, giving them all this, and Visage, their favorite hero, Liquid, they loved Visage. They like first phased it every game at TI3. He gives them Bat, Wisp, Tiny, Visage. This is they couldn't ask for better heroes. Liquid. They're okay. Thank you, PPD. Who is this idiot? Thanks for all these heroes. We're gonna destroy you now. PPD picks position 1 Dazzle for Fear. A bunch of other minus armor heroes. Picks in like an Enigma. And all they do is farm, 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 farm. They're really hard to gank. They have like these healing heroes. Fear is playing Dazzle, position 1, and they absolutely murder Liquid. It's not even close. They humiliate Liquid. Like, Liquid does get... The kill score is sort of kind of close for a while, but the only kills they really get are sort of like when they bring a bunch of heroes and they gank one guy, and then everyone else on EG is farming. And this is sort of that farming style that we see that wasn't as popular, at least among North American teams, where yeah, we'll just spread out and farm, and you bring everyone, you gank one guy, everyone else is farming. We actually come out ahead in that exchange, not you. And they farm, and they're farming a Dazzle against a Wisp Tiny, okay guys? They're farming a Dazzle. They farm, they farm, they farm, they get Roche, they run down mid, they just take all the they take all the buildings, they kill the barracks, they win the game. And they make it look effortless. It looks so easy. They just make it look so easy. So this was really, you know, the birth of I'd say PPD as a brilliant captain. You see it right here, the first games they ever play competitively against Team Liquid. And then you see a little bit more against Empire, ES Prime, Shock Therapy Cup, another old school Sad Boys game. And by the way, guys, all these games that I'm talking about, I'm going to mention a lot of games here. They're all going to be in the description down below, so if you wanted to watch any of these games, these old Sad Boys games, or any of the games I'm going to mention here, I'm going to provide links, and I'm also going to provide like timestamps for the interesting moments if I do talk about like an interesting moment in a game. So the next time they play Empire, game 1's really boring. They pick Naga +4. Arteezy plays Naga. We all know how that... it's not even close. It's really boring. They just farm and then they win. And then in game 2, Empire is sort of baiting them into picking Naga. They don't ban it. They leave it unbanned. And I'm sure EG could just... Sad Boys could have just picked Naga and won anyway. I honestly think that. But instead, PPD sort of does this really crazy mid-Furion, picks Chen, level 1 Roast strat, and they roll over them that way. So... Again, some maturity as a captain already. Oh, you know, we just won with Naga in game 1. They're giving it to us in game 2. So tempting, you know. And no, doesn't do it, doesn't take it. Beats them in a completely different way in game 2. So, a little bit of an interesting tidbit there. And now we'll just go over, I think, the 3 most significant events in PPD's career: TI4, TI5, and TI6. So TI4, for me, for Evil Geniuses, was summed up in one game. I think this was the best game they played. I think it was the best game of the entire TI. I think if you're only going to watch maybe one game that I talk about here today, I think this should be the game you watch. I really mean that. This was an amazing game. You know, I think it's very sad. The only game that people really seem to remember about EG at TI4 is their losses to VG Gaming, and you know how sort of gutting they were, and the games themselves weren't very interesting. No. So this game, they're playing against DK, and DK was like the gods leading into TI4. This was like Team Secret before there was a Team Secret. You know, this was like the original idea of Team Secret. Get a bunch of superstar players from a bunch of different teams and mash them all together and see if it works. And boy, did it work. You know, they were the favorites to win TI4. They were great. They had like, you know, arguably the best mid, the best offlane, the best carry, the best support duo in all of Asia, all including China, all on the same team. They were dominant. And EG, this is PPD's first game on the main stage of TI. His first game captaining is against DK. They get DK. Of all the teams they could have drawn, they get DK in the upper bracket. And he picks for Zai, position 4 Ursa. He picks position 5 Enchantress for himself. And then he picks a bunch of other weird heroes. And like, I think he picks Mirana. I don't remember the other heroes, but he picks Ursa Enchantress as his support duo in game 1. And they win, and it's a really close, like, scrappy, hard-fought game. EG's up really big early, and then DK makes it close, brings it back. DK's sort of out-farming them, but EG always has the advantage in, like, map control and kills. It's this long back-and-forth game. EG sort of outmaneuvers them in the end, and fantastic game. Go and watch it. Like, crazy, weird, wacky picks, you know? And that makes me think, you know, if you could win with those picks, could you have won with other heroes? Maybe, you know, but they did it with Enchantress and Ursa, and, you know, against DK, the first game of the main stage. Brilliant game. Yeah, just totally shocking. And, you know, no one remembers it. So, I just wanted to throw that out there. TI5, TI5, they come into TI5s as, you know, a real favorite. You know, they've, things were really up in the air for them. They lost Arteezy and Zai through the year, and then they had to pick up, oh god, who did they pick up? Aoi 2000 and Sumail. Like, who are these guys? Like, EG, oh, they're gonna suck. This is the end. This is terrible. It's a disaster. It's awful. They're losing so much talent, and then turns out Sumail's pretty good at the game, and everything is all right. So and then they win DAC, and everyone starts to calm down. We see, oh wow, this Sumail kid is pretty good at Dota, turns out. So in their group, they go 3 wins, 4 ties, and 0 losses in Group B. They tie for first place in the group with CDEC, 13 points. In the other group, Group A, LGD goes 5 wins, 2 ties, 0 losses. That's good for first place overall of all the teams, as well as first place in Group A. Secret gets second place in Group A. So Group A maybe was the easier group of the two. Group B was totally stacked, but regardless anyway. LGD has the best record of all the teams heading into the main stage. They lose to Secret 2-0. CDEC, they lose to CDEC 2-0 in the upper bracket. In Game 1, they're very ahead, and they probably should win, and then CDEC just plays beautiful Dota and makes a comeback and beats them, you know. Aggressive, plays really well, and they all play really well, and then, you know, CDEC, they just win like that. Like, they've been doing it all tournament long. They're this surprise team. They play really well. They played really well at TI5, and they just sort of wrestle this game away from EG. Whatever, okay, it's one game. And then in Game 2, EG just gets stomped, and it's not close. But the really concerning thing here is that they GG'd with all their Tier 2 towers up. They lose a fight in their own jungle, and to be fair, I watched the game. They had a pushing lineup. They needed to win early, and CDEC had some late game heroes. But still, you know, this is the upper bracket final. You win this, you're in the grand final. Like, they should not have... It's very concerning that they GG'd that early. And heading into the final day, to the lower bracket final, they're going to have to play LGD, and then if they win that, they're going to have to play CDEC again in the grand final. And they don't look that healthy mentally. Like, they just... To GG out like that with all your Tier 2 towers standing in the upper bracket finals of TI, that is not typical, not typically done, not a healthy sign. You know, maybe we could... Was the team not doing so well? And then we say after, yeah, well, AOE 2000, PPD weren't getting along. Who the hell knows what else was going on, so... Yeah, not a good sign, though. And then they play LGD. They play absolutely beautifully against LGD. It all seems fine. I would go and watch Game 1 against LGD in the lower bracket. Probably the best game of this TI, by far, of TI5. And then Game 2, I would say, is defined by 2 moments. This would be like the game of PPD, I would say. PPD gets his Winter's Curse stolen by MMY's Rubik, and LGD win a massive team fight that they absolutely had no business winning. And not just win it, they like lose very few heroes and 5 YPG, and they take total control of the game. And it's looking really bad. It's looking like it's going to Game 3 up until a Roche fight, and then LGD like takes Roche for free. And then PPD again, he is playing Winter Wyvern, and he runs up and he sort of jukes around, and somehow he baits like 2 of LGD's heroes into chasing him into the Radiant jungle. EG's playing Radiant. And they kill those heroes, and then somehow they get the Shadow Fiend alone, the Shadow Fiend of LGD who has Aegis. They kill him twice, and it's just it's just really well played by PPD. I'm not really doing it justice, so I linked it below and I put the timestamp there. I would really watch it, both those moments, because it's really, this is like the game of PPD, the good and the bad, and totally turns the game around. And then after that, they take like 2 towers and a set of racks, and the whole dynamic of the game changes. All in that one moment. So from maybe throwing the game away to bringing it right back. Very impressive. So for the people who say PPD has no mechanical skill, I would urge them to go ahead and look at that game. And then the grand finals aren't really that noteworthy. I think CDEC was nervous. I don't think they played their best Dota. And then on the other hand, you know, and the only game they did win was this really weird, cheesy game where they had like Mid-Brood plus Visage and like some other hero, and then EG never banned Lesh, which was the big strategical, the big genius move. Bulba has gotten the credit for that, who was their coach for the event. Although I still think PPD deserves some credit. You know, Bulba's like, oh, PPD, Shiki doesn't play Lesh. I looked at his Dota buff. Don't ban it. And then, well, okay, but I wonder how many captains in Dota 2 have had their coach run up to them with some crazy thing, let alone in the grand finals of TI. Oh, hey, this guy doesn't play. You should not ban this hero. It's the strongest hero in the game. It's wrecking everything. It's Leshrac. Patch TI5 Leshrac. Oh, just don't ban it. Don't ban it. Trust me, it's gonna work. You're gonna win. You know, so to be able to listen to that, you know, I wonder how many coaches have come up to their team captains with some crazy advice like that and just gets ignored. So you have to be able to actually listen to the advice when it's there. You have to be able to actually have the balls to do it. TI6, they had a group record of 3 wins, 3 ties, 1 loss. Pretty solid. Group A, 9 points total. They were the 2nd place team in Group A, only behind OG and ahead of the 3rd place Wings in Group A. The Group B winner was eHome with 12 points. 2nd place was Digital Chaos with 11 points. And then I just want to talk about one game in particular for TI3. The first game of the main stage against Newbie. So now, I don't really have the stats to back this up. It's just a gut feeling. I don't have the analytics to prove this. You know, I'm not a statistician. But my feeling is that teams that go into the upper bracket, their first game, game 1 of the upper bracket, not the finals, anything, the first game, the first series of the upper bracket, and lose game 1, typically do not do well for the rest of TI. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say they typically don't make top 4. Just throughout the course of all the TIs we've had, I'm gonna go out. You know, so this year we had Liquid. They lost their first series. They lost their first game. They won TI, and then DC. They lost their first series at TI6, and they made 2nd place. So there's 2 things that go against that right away. But I'm willing to bet, in general, over the course of TI, something like 80–85% of the teams that lose game 1 in the upper bracket do not do well at TI. So to me, this game is really significant. I feel it's really significant. It's your first game. You know, you got the nerves, the upper bracket, the main event, everything. Yep, it's just different than the group stage. You know, and they're against Newbie, so they're losing 1–8 in the game. It's not going well for them. They have a Storm. Very, very, very hard to play with Storm on your team when you're getting no kills. You know, the hero sort of needs that extra little gold and EXP boost you get from those skirmishes, those little scrappy team fights. You know, maybe 3 dies for one team, 3 dies for another, but the Storm lives. You know, this is really what you need to win a Storm game. And so you're losing 1–8. It's not good. Really not good. It's terrible. And really early in the game, and then they go for this sort of wild smoke wraparound, and it totally changes the game. It doesn't really make sense. None of their heroes really have all the items needed. They don't really have the levels. They may not have level 6 on some guy who needs level 6. They just do it anyway. They gather everyone up. They do it around Sumail. They show Sumail in the mid lane on Storm. They don't bring him. You know, you don't always have to do a 5-man smoke, guys. It doesn't have to be 5 heroes. It's not always good. So they show Sumail in the mid lane. They let him stay there, and then they go they're Radiant. They go all the way around behind the Dire Tier 1, like from the back line, between the Tier 1 and the Tier 2, and they come in through there. And then it just totally catches Newbie off guard. It's just so surprising, so unexpected, so devastating. So the score goes from 1–8 to 5–9. They get 4 kills. They only lose 1. Sumail, you know, he stays alive through the whole fight. He gets some gold and some XP. And Newbie, guys, does not get another kill for the entire rest of the game. It's 5–9 after that smoke gank. The game ends 25–9. Newbie doesn't get another kill for the entire rest of the game. I want to repeat that. They were up 8–1. The smoke gank happens. They don't get another sniff. They don't get another kill for the entire rest of the game. And I think PPD does deserve a lot of credit for that game and winning that game. And, you know, I've pointed out something really great from TI6. I'll also point out what I believe was a really big failure. Game 1 versus Wings in the upper bracket. I think this was terrible. Awful. You know, he drafts Wisp Sand King, first phase. The other team opens up with, like, Tide Hunter or some shit. They pick a bunch of, like, tanky shit. They pick, like, Tide Timber Razor. You know, so we go Wisp Sand King into Skywrath Mage, into Anti-Mage, into Weaver, in that order. And it's 5 squishy heroes. It's just an utter fucking disaster. There's no point in the game ever that they can ever 5-on-5 fight against Wings. The whole game revolves around split pushing, and it's like... Anyway, it was just a total fucking disaster. And for that, such an important game, game 1 of the upper bracket finals, and to just get shit stomped the way they did, like, it seemed like the kills weren't even that close. Like, Wings wasn't even going for kills. It was like, oh, whoa, well, Wings only has 4 kills and EG has 3. Oh, yeah, they're in it. And then it's like, oh, they don't have any tier 2 towers left. Oh shit, Wings is going high ground at minute, 18. Oh shit. Like, it was it was really bad. Like, really, really, really bad. You know, and I think this might have been the moment where PPD, like, lost the room, like they say in sports, you know, the coach loses the room. This might have been that moment, because this game was such an important game, and it was such a bad fucking draft. Like, it was really bad. Like, there are so many things you can pick in Dota, so many endless possibilities of 5 different heroes that you can fit together, and he picked Anti-Mage Weaver, Wisp, Sand King, Sky. Like, you know, I don't think I have to go into too much detail about what a bad draft that is, you know. It really didn't make a lot of sense, especially against heroes like Tidehunter that were already showing. So that was and Timbersaw. So it was a really huge failure, and then they lose the heartbreaking Game 3 against Digital Chaos. That basically involved Digital Chaos popping BKBs and suiciding at their buildings, and then just dying but getting buildings, and that's just sort of, that's how the game ended. It involved Fear, like, killed 4 of their heroes and got an ultra kill, but then the 5th hero just ended their throne. You know, they literally all just suicided for the throne that was, like, weakened, and all the outer buildings were dead because Moo's Rexar Beastmaster had been chipping away at the outer buildings all game long. So a really, really gutting and disappointing way to lose when you're 1 game away from the grand finals. And you've shown that you can get stomped by a Chinese team and then come back and beat them in the grand finals. Like, you did that just last year. So a very, very disappointing way to lose, just to die to, like, people suiciding on your buildings. Just really gutting. So, and then it's at this point that Sumail comes out and says he doesn't want to play with PPD anymore. And also Sumail had to play Brewmaster against Ursa mid in this game. And that was very puzzling, because the Ursa was already showing. It wasn't like they picked Brew and then they got countered by Ursa. The Ursa was actually already showing, and then they went with the Brew. And I don't feel like the Brew was too important to that draft. But I'm not gonna go into the criticizing the drafts too much, because that's not really my my area of expertise. Anyway, despite all that, whatever, they went first, third at TI under PPD. He had to deal with players leaving his teams. He's had to deal with, you know, people saying they don't want to play with him anymore. He's had to deal with twice being abandoned by Arteezy, once being abandoned by Zai, then Zai saying he's taking a break for school, then coming back, not really knowing what's happening with Zai. He's had to deal with actually quite a lot. And for a young cat, and then for TI4, he had Fear, unable to play with the elbow injury, had to use a stand-in. So this guy has had a lot of shit to deal with as the captain of EG in a very short amount of time. And what has he done? He's done third, first, and third at TI. That's how he's handled that adversity. So at the end of the day, the results speak for themselves, and he's done extremely well, and it will be extremely interesting to see how he handles this new team. I think there are a lot of parallels that can be drawn in this new team. CCnC reminds me a lot of Sumail, an unproven young mid player who's making the leap straight from the pub game to the pro game. You have the 2 KG Dota 1 veterans, Universe and Fear. Now you've got Pajkatt and Misery. And then you have Zai. Zai is consistent in both teams. So, and then now maybe we'll be able to answer the sometimes held debate. Why was EG successful? Was PPD the one, the mastermind behind it all? Was he propping up his teammates, all these guys? Are they just really mediocre players and PPD's the reason they're winning? Or maybe were they propping him up? Is PPD, you know, a lot of people like to say he's the least mechanically skilled pro player ever, and he's bad, and well, look at him when he streams pubs, and he's losing to 6K players, and he's not that good, and blah 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 blah. So this will help us answer that question, or at least address it. And we'll get to see how EG does over the next 2 years. We'll get to see how OpTic does over the next 2 years. So I think that will be very interesting. So now we'll talk about Zai. Zai is 20 years old, and he is Swedish. And although he's been a teammate of PPD, both in Han and in Dota 2, he could not be more different than PPD. He is extremely quiet and extremely confident in himself, but in a very, very good way, I would say. Not in an aggressive, in-your-face sort of way, but just in this in the decisions that he's made in his life, I would say. Taking 8 months off Dota to finish his school, his high school education, I think it was. Moving around teams. No, I want to go on to Team Secret. I'm going to be more successful there. And he was. Slightly disappointing at TI, but man, that team was amazing, and Zai was a big part of that. Moving around, leaving to go to OpTic after EG. No, I don't want to be on EG anymore. I want to go on OpTic. This is where I'm going to have the most success. So he has this constant pattern of betting on himself and always being right in Dota 2 and in Han and just in life in general. So I think that's very interesting about Zai. Got this very quiet, calm demeanor. He's leaning back, he's smiling, he's flicking his hair around, it's just, it seems like maybe the right personality type to play with PPD. If PPD really is that difficult to play with, and we can only speculate, after a year and a half, some other player, like Sumail, might just be like, oh, just get me out, dude. Just get me out. I can't do it anymore. I can't handle it. I can't do it. I don't care if we're winning. I want out. Zai, on the other hand, is just like, oh, it's okay, man. No, it's cool. I don't care, man. I don't care. I'm Zai. I'm smiling. I'm happy. No, it's all good, man. It's cool, man. PPD, yo, you're my guy. Like, he doesn't care. He's going to OpTic to play with PPD. He never brags, He never acts too excited after wins. He always acts as if he's expected to win. It's never really a big deal to him if he wins. It just seems, oh, well, wow, we won. Well, that's what I'm supposed to do. He's been winning since a very young age. At the age of 15 years old, he won MVP in the Honcast Awards of 2012. He won MVP of 2012. Best Offlaner of 2012, and Breakout Player of 2012. Well, 3 separate awards, more than any other player, and he was 15 years old at the time. And he's only gotten better since then. I can speculate that he enjoys playing the offlane role more, and that did factor into his decision to move to OpTic, and maybe even to move to Secret. I think the only reason that he's been playing support on EG for so long is that he happens to play on a team with Universe, and if not, that he would have been playing offlane this whole time. He always seems to move to that role when given the opportunity, and I think he just was not able to play it on EG. He's achieved great results in Han with that role. First place, DreamHack winner 2012. First place Han Tour Season 1, cycles 1, 2, 4, and 5. Third place, Han Tour Season 1, Cycle 6. Second place, Han Tour Season 1 Grand Finals. Second place, Garena Star League 2013. And third place, DreamHack Summer 2013. And this was with Trademark Esports. And he was playing the offlane role there. He was 15, 16 years old. And then he moved to Dota 2 right around 2013, late 2013, so a year and a half later, year later. And he's had great results since joining Dota 2. Has never really disappointed at any point in his career. He has experience playing with PPD in both Han and Dota 2, so maybe that is part of the reason that he's joining OpTic. I could also speculate that this was simply, in his mind, the highest skilled team, his best chance to win, the team available that had an opening at offlane, that would let him play offlane, and that had nothing to do with wanting to play with PPD. Maybe he's quite indifferent on playing with PPD, and he just wants to play offlane. The impression I get from all the decisions he's made through the course of his career makes me think that playing offlane might be the most important thing to PPD, or to Zai, sorry, and that might be at the core of his decision here. That he's happier playing that role. He has more fun playing that role, and he, with his quiet confidence and betting in himself that we talked about, believes he can win a TI playing offlane. Maybe he believes his talents aren't really best utilized as a support player. It's quite a waste for him to play support, and he just wants to play offlane. So we will see if that is the case. Another thing I could mention about Zai is, something we talk about in sports sometimes is, does someone have intangibles? I believe Zai has the intangibles. Everything you could mention. Like these things I was mentioning earlier. His ego has never really seemed to have grown at any point in his career. He's a very level-headed person. He doesn't seem to yell or scream. His adrenaline doesn't seem to spike too high when he's playing. That can actually be bad. Even if you're just getting excited, your hands can start to shake. Your decision-making can be reduced. It can actually be a very bad thing. He seems so calm and level-headed, like he's been coached by some sort of professional sports psychologist. You know, he probably has. From what we've seen of his video from the International, he has very good parents. I think both of his parents have done a very good job raising him. He's just seems like a very level-headed, calm, down-to-earth person, and you cannot say that about a lot of the people that play Dota 2 professionally. But Zai, you can say that about, and I think that absolutely does affect his career, and I think that does make him have better results and stay calm under pressure. The moment never seems too big for him. Pretty much anything outside of skill that could be a negative effect on him is not. He is all positive across the board. And so, yeah, he has pretty much been a Tier 1 player since the moment he stepped into Dota, and there is no reason to think that that will change. I believe he is the true star on this OpTic team. I think he is the least likely player to be kicked from this OpTic team, and if he leaves, it will probably be his own decision. And yeah, we will just have to see where his career path takes him next. You know, will he achieve great results at TI with OpTic? Well, this next player will certainly play a role in that. And with that, I will talk about CCnC. He's 19 years old, and he is American. He is from the USA. He is a talented player, definitely a talented player. His signature heroes are Puck, Templar Assassin, and Storm Spirit. Well, the first thing to note is that he's young. He's only 19 years old. But unlike someone like Zai, he doesn't have this long history of being a relevant player for like 4 or 5 years now. This is his first time being relevant. If you've been around Dota for a long time, or if you've played a lot of games on US East, you've certainly probably heard of him before. You've certainly probably been in a server with him before. He used to play a lot of 5-stat games, used to play a lot of party queue games, and he moved on to playing a lot of solo queue games. So he's played a lot of Dota over the last 4 years. But so the chances are that you've probably played against him if you're from the US, if you play on US East servers at all. But this is his first shot in a truly elite pro team. He was on ISGG, which became Team Freedom. And that team famously was really, really doing well in the NA qualifiers. They had an 8-1 record. The only map they had lost was to Team Red. And then they lost the first place tiebreaker. And had they not played Team Red, they wouldn't have had to play a tiebreaker. They had to play against Team NP, which was Eternal Envy's team. And they lost the tiebreaker, so that meant NP qualified and they did not. Then they had to go into the playoff bracket, which they won, and they won their games. They went to the finals, and okay, just one best of 5 to qualify. Best of 5 against DC. Grudge match against Mason, a player he's had troubles with in the past, and I'll touch on that. They lose 0-3, and they get crushed by Digital Chaos. The games aren't particularly close, and they fail to qualify for TI. And, well, someone like Bulba, someone like Mason would probably tell you, oh yeah, dude, well, the best of ones, you know, best of ones group stage, they were just overrated. Oh, we were 5-4, they were 8-1, whatever. So they won a few more best of ones than us, doesn't really matter. We were the better team. Look at what happened when the chips were down, when it mattered the most. And then someone from Team Freedom, maybe Flea or CCnC himself would tell you, oh no, we were much more skilled than them, we're the better team, we were nervous, we collapsed, we choked, we couldn't show our true skill, we choked when it mattered most in the grand final, but we were much more skilled than those guys. I will say, having watched a lot of that qualifier, the way they were playing in the group stage certainly made them look like the best team, and made them look like the best team in that group. Better than NP, even. But when it mattered most, they didn't perform well. So I would probably lean on that side. But again, you know, best of ones in general have been shown to just not mean that much. So I think there is definitely some weight to both sides of that argument. The next thing I'll talk about is his attitude problems and how much of a hated player he is. I think no player in the history of Dota 2 who has broken into the Tier 1 scene has received this much hatred. No player in the history of Dota. You could say BSJ has received this level of hatred, and in his case it's not even deserved. CCnC has done some things to actually warrant some of the hate he's getting. Not to this level, not to this extent. BSJ is more of a Tier 2, more of a Tier 3 player, not a Tier 1 player. CCnC, this is his chance to play on a Tier 1 team and prove if he's a Tier 1 player. So, I mean, the first thing he's done is, you know, he streams himself a lot, right? And when you stream yourself a lot and you act a certain way, people actually get to see it. Whereas, do you not stream yourself playing, like someone like Mason? Mason, guys, is, you know, I can only speculate based on maybe the posts that I've read on any Dota, the general way that I've seen him carry himself in the last 3-4 years, is not always the most well-mannered person himself. I'll say that. At times, I think he's been worse than CCnC, and I could absolutely buy into the idea that in this exchange between the two, Mason was actually being shittier to CCnC than vice versa. Again, I don't know, I'm only speculating here. But when the public was watching, when the chips were down, CCnC sort of made a fool of himself a bit, and then he said the thing about, oh, if you guys qualify, I'll quit Dota forever. Stupid thing to do, stupid thing to say. It's over now. But, you know, the thing about getting into a beef or an argument with a guy like Mason is he's really good at it. You know, he's been doing it for years. This whole thing where you get into an argument with a guy on the internet, and then you insult each other, you take turns until one guy quits. Mason's actually really, really good at that. So for a guy like CCnC, he's a bit younger, he's a bit awkward, he's probably not that good at that. And so basically, my understanding, my view of the situation is that the public only caught like the very tail end of that feud, and the whole other side of that wasn't publicly captured, and I think it's maybe a bit misrepresented, and CCnC gets all of the hate for that. But again, you know, I don't have some inside information or anything like that, but that's the impression I get. And anyway, moving on from that, you know, he does stream himself a lot, and when you stream yourself a lot, you know, the way you act is going to come out, and he's been known to, he just streams himself. You know, when you stream yourself breaking your items and feeding couriers and running down mid, people are gonna, hey, what the fuck, man, stop doing that, and then you keep doing it. So, you know, he's getting some hate for that, and I think that's probably, you know, some hate, some is probably fair. And then lastly, the decision to be made an analyst at TI7. This one was actually outside of his control, right? Did he do the best job? He did okay. I don't think it was terrible. Could someone else have done a better job? Sure, yeah, probably. You know, was it his first time? Was it his first time doing it? Yeah, it was. You know, is he smart about Dota? Did he say some things that were smart about Dota? Yeah, he did. You know, was he a little bit awkward? Yeah, probably. You know, and then, you know, he's doing his best. He didn't. Is he a Valve employee? Did he make the decision who the TI7 analyst is going to be? No, guys. No, he didn't make that decision. So, you know, people were upset with that decision, and then they took it out on him. You know, he bore the brunt of that. And then you combine all this other stuff, this crap with Mason, and then the way he's conducts himself on stream and in pub games, and it all boiled over into this just being this unbelievably hated player. And I think, you know, at some point it's not warranted anymore. I think at some point it's too much. You know, a guy acts kind of shitty in pub games, but people are saying some pretty awful things to him every single time his name comes up, every single chance they get. I can't imagine what his Twitter feed had looked like at some points, you know. At some point it's too much, you know, and I think especially for a young guy, you know, 19 years old, on his first Tier 1 team, trying to break into the pro scene. That's got to make it just a little bit tougher, and got to give you just a little bit more edge, a little bit more fire, a little bit more wanting to prove yourself, and then failing to go to TI7, being knocked out by your arch rival. I mean, you couldn't write a script this good, you know? This guy, he's got everything to prove now. Absolutely everything to prove. You know, he's been shit on by everyone. His got kicked down in the fucking mud, and then he was sort of rising back up. He was going to qualify for TI, and then the fucking schoolyard bully comes along and punches him right in the fucking face and knocks him back down into the mud. Like, you couldn't script it any better, you know? And now he's finally getting his act together, and he's get a chance to play in a real Tier 1 team, better teammates, gets to play with PPD. So, you know, we'll see what he can do. To me, the player I would compare him to is Sumail. He reminds me a lot of Sumail, both in how mechanically skilled he is, and also he's one of the few players I've seen that's made the jump straight from pub games to the pro game. Mason's actually another one. Straight from pubs, straight to a Tier 1 team. That's very, very not normal, and typically only really, really gifted players would ever make that jump. And Mason certainly is a gifted player. He's extremely skilled at the game. And he's in very good form right now as well. And CCnC as well reminds me of that. He is, I know. I mean, is he going to be the next Sumail? Who knows? He could be. No one knew who Sumail was. No one knew. Right? You can't predict these things. We have to wait. We have to see how the year plays out, how the lands play out, how TI plays out. Then we'll know. Now it's pointless to speculate, because you can't watch someone play pubs and know how good they're going to be. It's ridiculous. And I think in the games that have mattered, he's played quite well. And the fact that PPD, making this team, big sponsor, you know, big name guys, he has all of Dota available to him, you know, and get, you know, granted, maybe not everyone wanted to play for him, but he has all of the world of Dota available to him. And he decides to pick CCnC for his team. I think that is very meaningful and very interesting. He could have picked anyone, guys. He could have picked anyone in all of Dota. And in 2015, he picked Sumail, and now in 2017, he has picked CCnC. And the last guy he picked that was totally unproven did pretty well for himself. So, you know, can CCnC explode the way Sumail did in 2015? You know, will he have a DAC? Will he have an event where he just arrives and shows the world how good he is? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe he'll get kicked and they'll bring in a different mid, you know. I think if you were to make early candidates for, if you were to upgrade this team, you might look at Pajkatt and CCnC as being out and bringing in different carry and different mid. But if we're talking about the team as it stands right now and what they're going to do in the future, this is a guy who could double in skill in the next year. You know, he's never had this opportunity. And playing with a guy like PPD is a really great opportunity. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. And it'll be a very interesting year for him and for OpTic in general. And that'll bring me to the fourth player, and one of the old boys on this team, Pajkatt, 25 years old, Swedish player. And I can't talk about Pajkatt without talking about Dota 1, and more specifically, patch 6.50, and then the stable patch, competitive patch that followed afterwards, patch 6.52e. And patch 6.50, guys, was the patch that they added Invoker to the game. And Pajkatt is known, maybe not well enough as he should be, but he's known by some people for being the first real master of Invoker, the first real guy who figured out Invoker. And he was a lot younger back then, and he was this sort of unknown guy. You know, he wasn't Loda, like, it wasn't Loda who mastered Invoker, it wasn't this guy, it wasn't that guy, it was Pajkatt. And he played it a lot in C-Deck Vouch League, and his replays were always really, really highly downloaded, and, oh god, a new Pajkatt replay's out, Pajkatt Invoker, download it, like, you know, this was how people were learning to play Invoker at a very high level, aside from just playing it in pub games, you know, but this guy was like, he was like the best. He was the best Invoker. So this is sort of how he first really got noticed, was just playing, you know, not the very first way, but it definitely put some extra oomph behind his name. You know, it really added to his legend a little bit, if you will. What legend he does have, and I think that's worth noting. Now, we, unfortunately, back then, you know, we didn't get a very big window. We didn't know what the Chinese teams were doing. We didn't get to see, maybe there was some Chinese in-house, maybe there was some Chinese equivalent of Pajkatt, who was also an amazing invoker, and they would say, oh, no, this guy invented invoker, but we didn't get to see that. We had GoSuGamers.net, we had Pajkatt replays, so for my money, Pajkatt invented modern invoker, at a competitive level anyway. He was the first guy to really make that hero work. Also very good with Shadow Fiend and Mirana. I think he even messed around with Mid-Dazzle the odd time. You know, whatever. He's like a skilled young core player, you know, early in Dota 1. I would compare him to how Arteezy maybe was viewed in 2013, but I don't think he didn't quite have that level of hype, to be honest with you. But he was certainly considered a very good, promising player. And when we consider that, his results in Dota 2 are extremely disappointing. He has never really lived up to his billing in Dota 1. He was considered a talented mid and carry player, and he was, not just considered, he was a talented mid and carry player. Still is, and to be honest, he's been brutally disappointing in Dota 2. Very, very sad results. $83,000 earned. Now, obviously, let's put this into context here. Shitting on someone who earned $83,000 playing video games. I'm not trying to do that. You know, power to you. That's great. But we put it in the context of the year we're in and where we're at and everything like this and everything like that. You know, someone like Zai, who's been around half the amount of time as him, has earned $1.3 million. So in that particular context, it's very, very disappointing. Especially for someone who is, by all accounts, a very good player. He's never really looks super disappointing when you watch him play. The skill has always been there. It's just been the results that have really been lacking. So very, very disappointing in that sense. You could almost say wasted talent at this point. But we'll talk about the beginning of his career. His very first team, notable team in Dota 1 was a team called Zeo Divine. It had two Norwegian players called Nosg and Nilk. Not really notable players. It had two Swedish players called Swoopy and Sonde. You might have heard of them if you played Dota 1. They were around, they played, they were on teams, they weren't really that notable. But and then it had also, at one point in time, it had a guy called Oxypaw. This guy was notable. Former Ukrainian player, former teammate of Dendi. Played on the old Wolker Gaming squad at one point, which went on to become like Navi. So, yeah, Oxypaw was a notable player for sure. Then he played on BFB for a little while. This was a sort of a mixed team. The roster was always rotating. It wasn't a very stable team. At one point, they did have a bit of a stable lineup, but he wasn't part of that. I'm speaking to when he played for it. It was called Ben's Fuck Buddies. You know, friends of Merlini. Merlini was on the team. This kind of thing. It's not really a very serious team. Maybe his first real serious team was a team called DDT, Ducky's Dream Team, which later went on to be called Blight, and then was called Lost.eu. And this is his first real shot at playing with Misery. So Misery was in the team before him, and then he gets picked up. You know, they've had some guys, they lose some guys, and then, oh, well, why don't we pick up this kid, Pajkatt? He seems pretty good. So they pick up Pajkatt. And the roster was Ducky, Loda, Misery, Pajkatt, and Twisted. And Twisted is a name you should know if you were a fan of Dota 1 or a long-time Dota 1 guy. He's actually quite a good Swedish player. I believe he was a support player, but roles were a little more flexible back then. But yeah, Twisted, definitely a notable player. Never the best, you know, not like an Ake or a Miracle or anything, but Twisted was definitely a name. You know, he was a name. He was notable. And then after that, he played on Team Home, which I'm not sure if it was related to New World Order, and then he played on New World Order, which became GGNet. And this again is an upgrade, you know, moving up in the world. And this is a team with Azen, Miracle, Puppy, Kuroki, and Pajkatt. So this, you know, this is his best team by far of the career. You see the scope of his career. He's just playing on better and better and better teams. This guy's really good. He's getting on better and better teams. you know, you can see the talent, you can see the hype, and the next team after this was, the next thing that happened right after this was TI1. So looking at this, the scope of his Dota 1 career, you would think that after TI1 it would just keep going up like that, and it hasn't, and that's the disappointing part. So talk about GGNet, GoSuGamers.net briefly sponsored a Dota team. Azen was a player, I would compare him to Black, actually. He was a carry player. He was a real journeyman guy. He was a Russian player. Played on EG at one point. Played with Fear. Played on... God, I can't remember all the teams he played on. He played on a lot of different teams. Very much like Black in that sense. Never the best, but always good. You know, always good enough to, like, place well at tournaments. He was always around. He was always relevant. You heard about him all the time, just like Black. You know, always out there. Always playing with a different guy and a totally different team here and a totally different team there. He was Russian, but, you know, I don't know for sure. I'm guessing he spoke English. He played with all these different English-speaking stacks and moved around. He's playing with Swedish guys. He's playing with, like, Fear. He's playing with all these different guys. Very interesting guy. Old school guy. I don't think he ever played Dota 2, but he was very, very notable in Dota 1. Sort of like the Black of that. I mean, Black played Dota 1 too, but, you know, that's who I would compare him to. And we had Miracle. Arguably maybe the best support in Dota 1. Certainly one of them. I mean, Puppy and Kuro. Kuro was not a support player, he's a core player in Dota 1, but Puppy, you know, maybe Ake, Miracle. Miracle might have been the best support in Dota 1. This guy was unbelievably good on KSint and all the teams he played for. So there's like a really top-level player. Puppy and Kuroki. Kuroki may be the undisputed best core player in Dota 1. Mid player, whatever. He was like the Pudge. He played Pudge. He'd play whatever. He just dominated, dumpstered everybody. Kuroki was unbelievable in Dota 1. Puppy, the brilliant, the genius captain, the guy who can slay Chinese teams that no one else can. Now we're getting into like 2010. This is when they actually started to play Chinese teams, not just these shitty European online cups. And then Pajkatt. So Pajkatt actually fit into this team. He was on this level of all these other players. And trying to put it into context, these were very, very, very good players. And this is in 2010, and then 2011 comes around, and TI1 comes around. And he plays on OK.nv.int with Fear, Lacoste, 1437, and Come With Me. You know, Come With Me and Lacoste were pretty, again, journeyman sort of players, decent players in Dota 1. Not the best, but very, very, very good. Always near the top, never the top. Fear was like quite at the top. He was on a team with Puppy for a long time. That team that, like, not KSint, the team before KSint, and that was a really, really good team. This was a good team. They didn't have the greatest result at TI1. And then he moved on to form EG with Fear, Misery, Demon, and Playmate. Playmate was a notable MYM player. And himself. And they played together for like 1 or 2 months, and then he left to play on Experience Gaming with his buddies from Sweden. And Experience Gaming later became CLG. And this is a long-forgotten team, but this team was actually very, very good. And they just happened to play in the time between TI1 and TI2. And they happened to have a kind of a bad showing at TI2. This team was very good, guys. This team had Pajkatt position 1, Misery position 2, Lacoste position 3, and then Miracle position 4, the Dota 1 Miracle, like top level support. Ake position 5. Again, another brilliant top level support player. Ake from SK Gaming, longtime support player for Loda. Miracle, the guy who's played on KSint, the greatest team of all time, with Puppy, the team that went a year without losing a series. And Miracle was a big part of that, by the way. He was like a star on that team. He didn't just hang around. So this is a fucking loaded team in terms of talent. Misery and Pajkatt, these solid, these new school Dota 1 players, loads of talent, core players, and then this great support duo, and then this solid journeyman offlaner in Lacoste. And they were good. They were very good. 9th to 16th, Star Ladder Season 3 qualifier, okay, 1 bad quali. You know, 5th to 8th, Play for Dota 2012, number 11, some online cup 58th, and then first place, BTS, Beyond the Summit, World Tour, 2-1. 2-1 against IG in the finals. Yeah, that IG, the same IG that won TI2. Then they go on 3rd place, the defense. The defense Season 2. Lose 0-2 to Mouse. Okay, 3rd place. Pretty good, though. 2nd place, Pro Dota 2 Pro League Season 1. Lose 1-3 to Bottom. It's probably some sort of NA versus EU online match. I don't quite know. But 2nd place, you know, very good. 2nd place, the Premier League Online Season 1. Lose. It was like, yeah, the Premier League Online League. It was just a big group. It was just an online league, just a big group, round robin, and then the winner at the end of the season with the best record was the winner. Navi won that. Navi, another team with amazing TI2 result, went 11-0 in this particular group. CLG went 10-1. 1 game less than Navi in this Premier League Online League. Okay, so we're starting to see the level of results this CLG team can put up. 2-1 against IG. Almost identical results to Navi in this online cup. 3rd in Star Ladder, Season 1, the very first Star Ladder, lost 1-2 to Moscow 5 in the losers finals. 1st, joined Dota Masters 5, 2-1 against Derer. Derer is not the greatest team, but yeah, they beat them, and that's what they're supposed to do. 1st out of 8 teams, Raid Call Dota 2 Cup, some online cup, they got 1st place. So coming into TI2, this is a team with, this should be like a top 3, top 4 sort of level team. Top 1 if they play well. This was actually a really, really good team, guys. So this is the very beginning of the trend of talent is there, the skill is there, the results not being there. So they went 6-8 in Group A, and this is Pajkatt and Misery playing together. This is the 2 of them. They do this for 3 TIs in a row. They go 6-8 in Group A, and then in the lower bracket they play Orange Esports. And this Orange Esports had Yamate. Yamate was an old school player. He was a god in Dota 1. Just an absolute god. I think he was Singaporean player. I think he was Singaporean. And yeah, just what an absolute god. Just like a core player, position 1 sort of player, you know. Everyone loved Yamate. He's another one of those guys. You see a replay, it's Yamate, you download it. Like, sadly, because of the times of the era, we just got to see him play against other SEA teams, not so much against European teams, not so much against Chinese teams. Just the way things were back then in Dota 1. But man, just want to mention Yamate briefly because sadly they had to play against his fucking team. What are they doing in the lower bracket? Shitty. And I did link this game. They gave them Morphling. I don't know why they did that. Their draft, they looked really bad. Like, this team is supposed to be so talented. They look playing scared. They're not pushing. Pajkatt didn't really play that well. He got the Pajkatt Invoker mid. He does really well in his lane. He's against Mushi, fucking, you know, Mushi mid. And he's playing broken patch TI2 Morphling with like 70 damage at level 1. He has to play Invoker against this. Invoker has like shit damage, and he actually does really well. He goes even in the lane, and they just don't do anything for the rest of the game. So quite disappointing. So and then after this, he and Misery both go on to form or join, I'm not really sure on that, LGD Int. And their most notable result is 2nd place at G League. They were 1st place in a group with LGD.CN and Team DK. And this is a very notable result because this was a Chinese tournament held in China. And foreign team, this might have been the first foreign team to play in a Chinese tournament held in China. I'm actually quite confident that they were the first. So this was very significant and a very, very good result. They got 2nd place, you know. This was an all-Chinese tournament, you know. There were 2 groups, there was a playoff, there was a bracket, everything. 2nd place, like, hey, that's really, really, really good. And then throughout the rest of the year, you know, middling results, you know, maybe 5th, 6th here and there on the tournaments with good teams, you know, maybe 1st place here or there on some online cup with some bad teams. We go into TI3, it's another disappointing result for Pajkatt and Misery. 5-9 in Group B, they win 1 lower bracket game against Maus before ultimately losing to No Tail and Fly's Fnatic. Same theme as TI2. Good talent, you know, the talent's not, it's not like the talent's not there, it's there. The promise is there, the results, they're not there. Next up is Team Dog. Later would become Team Mouse Sports. They go to ESL1 Frankfurt. They win the open qualifier. They play in the closed qualifier. They qualify to the 8-team main event. That's pretty hard to do. They got picked up by Mouse. They were Team Dog at first. MSS is on. This is the first time we see MSS as a pro player. They lose 2-1 to IG. That's it. Their event's over. It was some weird, crappy format, single limb. So, well, thanks for all the effort, boys. Yeah, you're out. You lost to IG. So that's it. And then rest of the year they have sort of, again, middling result, mid-tier results. You know, the occasional decent one where the competition's not that good, and then maybe some not so decent ones where the competition's real good and you can sort of forgive that. They head into TI4. They have to go through the open qualifiers. They barely beat Virtus Pro 3-2, and they do qualify for TI4, and VP instead has to play the wild card, and VP does not make it through the wild card. So they go 7-8 in the groups. Actually, I'm not sure if VP made it through the wild card or not. I might be thinking of a different TI, but anyway, they beat VP 3-2 and they qualify for TI4, and they don't have to worry about wild card at all. They go 7-8 in the groups, and they don't even make it to the main event because TI4 had that really awful format where like half the games are not played in Key Arena, and you only got to see like half the games in Key Arena. It was like they only showed like top 8 plus in Key Arena. So Mao's never got to play a game in Key Arena, despite qualifying for the TI. Quite sad, quite disappointing, and I can imagine that would leave you with quite a bitter taste in your mouth indeed. And after 3 years of disappointing results, struggles and hardships and friendships and whatever, Pajkatt and Misery decide to call it quits. They split up and they go their separate ways. And it's just a tale of 2 careers after that point. Misery goes alright on the up and up. Pajkatt goes straight down and does not do so well without Misery. So, while I could say and point to the fact that Pajkatt has had disappointing results, I mean, qualifying to TI 3 years in a row is still good. And he didn't get bottom 16 every time. They always top 12, I guess, you know. A lot of guys would kill for that. So, you know, I would actually go point to the fact that the best results of his career have all come with Misery on his team. And that will be highlighted by this next little stretch where he plays without Misery on his team. So right after that, he joins Team Tinker. Their best result is they beat Navi 1 time in 1 online event. They get first place, but it's a pretty washed up Navi. This post TI4 Navi, and they're still trying to keep it together, but it's not working. I think Puppy is left at this point, and it doesn't go well. So it's a very washed up Navi. They beat them. That's it. That's it for Team Tinker. Not too much happens there. He moves on to Alliance. Okay, he's getting a shot in Alliance. This is pretty big. Well, 2nd place, MLG Pro League Season 2. They lose to NIP. Probably should have won. That's kind of disappointing. But EG and VP were at this event, so it's not like the competition was super weak. I guess 2nd place is still pretty good, right? But after that, okay, they go 5th, 6th at Star Ladder, they go 5th, 6th at I-League, and then they go 5th, 8th at ESL1 Frankfurt. And ESL1 Frankfurt was his last event with Alliance. And he moves on to join or form 4 Clovers and Leprechaun. And this is a team with EGM, another Alliance castaway. And he actually has better results with this team than he did with Alliance. He has some mid-tier results. The best result they had is 3rd place at Asus ROG Dream League Season 4, doing better than the 4th place Alliance did on LAN. And that's nice to beat your old team. I think anyone who's ever played an old team of theirs and beaten them can attest. Yeah, it feels good, man. So I'm sure he was very happy with that. And actually, very notably, he played a game where he set 2 world records on Shadow Fiend in the same game against Alliance at that event. And I have provided a link for that below. So, yeah, you know, this again, the same theme of the skill being there for Pajkatt. We see it here. You know, he's playing on some sort of tier 2 mixed team. He's playing against his old team, Alliance. Alliance probably got more talent at that point in time, but he had I think he had 24,000 net worth, and the second most farmed hero was 9,000 net worth. And that was on his team, the winning team, second most farmed. Okay, but they don't really do anything else super notable on Four Clovers and Leprechaun. And he moves on to a team called Mama's Boy, with Sexy Bambo, Yapzor, and Soxa. Not a whole lot to talk about on this team. Their best result is 4th place in a captain's draft tournament, so not a whole lot. And then there's a bit of a gap, and then he joins Na'Vi this year. And their best result, and really their only result, was qualifying for the Summit 7. They went through the online qualifier, and they did qualify. And then they went 5th to 6th at the Summit 7, so that was not great. And that's about it. They went Epicenter Moscow 2017, 04 in the groups. Didn't even make the playoffs there. The competition wasn't that great there, by the way. 6th at Dream League Season 7. They had some kind of okay results, but then they failed to qualify for TI7 through the CIS qualifiers, and now Valve's added CIS qualifiers. There's no one big EU, there's a CIS one as well. And the hard part about this is they didn't even make the bracket stage of the closed qualifier. Like, they get the closed qualifier, and they get about 8, 10, 12 teams. They make them play a big group stage, and then they make like a pretty generous, pretty big bracket where they all play each other to get through. I mean, sometimes I think it might, depending on how many teams there are, but they didn't even make the bracket. They didn't even make it out of their group. And these are like, a lot of these teams are like not notable like tier 2 teams, and like some of them, they didn't even make it out of that group. So that's like a really, really, really depressing result. Like, not only did they not qualify for TI7, they didn't even make it out of their group in the closed qualifier. They didn't, yeah. So really, really tough. And now we're on OpTic. Now he's on OpTic. So from 2012 until now, Pajkatt and Misery together on the same team have failed to deliver significant results. Can TPD make what used to be a very dynamic duo, now maybe more of a duo of veteran players, see their true potential? Can he make it work? Can he take these guys and elevate them to the level that I believe they're capable of, and they believe they're capable of? And can he bring the best out of Pajkatt? Because I think this is a player, through his whole career, I look through each one of these teams. I think CLG was the one team that was a really great situation for him. And had that team stuck together longer, and had Dota been bigger back then, had there been more money, I think that was the one team that's really a good situation for him. I don't really see a lot of great teams here. I see Pajkatt, and then I see like questionable rosters around him. That TI4 Mao's team, not a great team. The TI3 LGD Int team is okay, but it's not the greatest team, not the greatest roster. Like, he hasn't really had the greatest teams around him through his career, so that could help explain his really disappointing results. But I think at the end of the day, when you have that level of talent, and you have those sort of disappointing results, at some point some of the blame has to fall on you. And I also could look at, maybe, has the work ethic not been there since TI4? I mean, from TI1 to TI4, he's playing on these very professional teams, these very these high-level teams, these teams that are really, really out there, these are really the teams you would expect him to be on. And then after that, it's like Team Tinker, Four Clovers and Leprechaun, Mama's Boy, I don't know if there's something I'm not knowing about, like he was doing a university study, or if he was still trying to be a pro and he was just like playing 2 hours, 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, not wanting to put in the work. Is he a bit lazy? Does he have personality issues? These are questions I can't really answer. I could certainly ask them, though, because when I look at that immediate drop-off in terms of the quality of teams he's playing on after TI4, I find it hard to imagine that all the people out there just suddenly decided, oh, we never want to play with Pajkatt again. Like, this guy just never deserve a spot on a Tier 1 team again. I find that hard to believe. So his immediate descent onto Tier 2 teams is surprising to me, and I wonder if there's like a reason for that, what that might be. Anyway, the big question is, can PPD turn this guy's career around? Can he turn him into a a winner, a TI winner, you know, because all it takes is one event. Misery, it's the same story. You know, disappointing TI results. He had the 2 major wins with Secret, but you know, got all these disappointing TI results, and all it takes is one, and then the whole narrative flips. So playing with PPD is a pretty good place to do that, I think. So now let's look at Misery. He is 26 years old. He is a Danish player. He was, when he came onto the scene in 2008, he was a young, hot-headed, hotshot talent. Originally, he was a shit talker. Now he's an experienced veteran with countless games and tournaments under his belt. He's got a 2nd place at TI. He can assist in the captain's role. He's extremely versatile. Unlike Pajkatt, who's played core position, his position 1, position 2, his entire career, not really played much support. I think he has like 1 time, but mostly just position 1, position 2. Misery, on the other hand, has made this steady decline into the support role, and now he's like only support, you know. So we look at TI1, carry, TI2, mid, TI3, position 5, TI4, position 4, TI5, position 5, secret, in between TI5 and TI6, position 3, the Shanghai and Frankfurt major, and then TI6, position 5. So there's this real, you know, adaptation by Misery, whereas maybe someone like Pajkatt has been more stubborn and no, I play mid, I play carry, this is what I play, I'm going to play it until I retire. Like Loda, same thing. Although maybe now I think he might be playing support now, but mostly for his whole career he's been carry player, I'm a carry player, I'm a carry player, carry all the way. Misery, on the other hand, has gracefully, you could say, moved into the support role, and done so with success, with great success. I'll talk about his first team. When he first started out, it was a team called MET, Mom Equals Toilet, and this was a young, upstart Danish team. And this was interesting because there was only one Danish team, which I'll talk about now, called MYM, Meet Your Makers. And if you're a fan of Dota, you're a fan of Dota 1, you know MYM. MYM, I almost want to say MYM was Dota, like competitive Dota. To me, at least, MYM was Dota. Like they were the model of consistency and winning and class and dignity and respect. And these guys, they always had a team, and Malk and Mania were always on it. And from like 2007 all the way through 2002, just all the way through Dota 1, maybe even 2006, I'm not quite sure, just all the life of Dota 1 competitive, all this early time, everything, maybe far back as 2005, MYM was there, and MYM was fantastic. Sometimes unbeatable, sometimes the best team. There was a few teams that came along that could unseat them. You know, once was Vigos's Virtus Pro, once was Puppy's KS Int, you know. But for the most part, they were the best team. And if they weren't the best team, they were probably the 2nd best team. And they did it all with like an all-Danish lineup, which I think deserves some credit in itself, because it's not a very big country. So, you know, you have these other teams like DMZ, and, you know, like Kuroki had an all-German team at one point, you know, these, and then he went on to play on mixed teams. But you have these teams like, and it's an all-Danish team, and then they're beating the Swedish teams, they're beating the German teams, they're beating the Russian teams. To me, that speaks a lot to Malk as a captain, and they would just do these creative. It really pushed you to be creative, like the way they would get ganks off. You know, you'd have the Mania Sand King, Mania, known for he was the original Sand King player. He would always find a way to farm his Blink Dagger, and then he would get some amazing Blink Burrow Strikes off, amazing Blink Epicenters off. Malk, the constant support player through his whole career, the captain, the smart drafter, the brilliant tactician, you know. I remember watching one game, I think I was just watching it to see like some Shadow Fiend play. So, you know, I was just looking at the mid lane. And I think the team I was watching was playing against MYM. And I look at Malk and Mania, and they're like, I think the player I was watching was a Radiant mid. I'll never forget it. It was hilarious. Radiant mid, you know, guy, Shadow Fiend, whatever. Or I think yeah, they were ganking him, something like this. And they were ganking the Dire Hero. Sorry, yeah, and they were on Radiant. Okay, So they ran all the way around, these two supports. There's no smoke of deceit back in Dota 1, okay? So remember this. There's no smoke of deceit. So you had to be a bit creative to get first blood. You had to pull some real shit. You know, tangos got involved. You have an Earthshaker, maybe a fissure block. People love to pick, like, triple stuns just to be able to get first blood, you know. It was a real struggle to get first blood. So they're on Radiant. They're on Sentinel, actually. They run all the way around into the guy's jungle, and then they just sit there. The two of them, they just sit there. It's a Vengeful Spirit and a Sand King. Maelk on the Venge, Mania on the Sand King, and they just sit there, and about 5 minutes passes in the game. They don't move. The lane finally pushes up. The guy pushes up. They run down. They stun him. The other guy stuns him. They go. They kill him. They get the first blood. I'll never forget that. MYM. Okay. And then you have Met, Misery's first team. New school team. Totally, these are some new Danes, you know. And MYM, the one thing maybe they weren't known for so much was their mechanical skill. They were brilliant tacticians and brilliant strategy, and they just didn't, you know, I'm sure some guys screaming right now, but not as much, maybe. You know, they won with a lot of brilliant tactics and brilliant rotations and brilliant ganking and, like, you know, they picked a lot of, like, weird late game stuff like Necrolite and Medusa and Lich. And they just do whatever and win. And then you have this team, Met. First of all, who names their team Met? It's called Mom equals Toilet. And that is sort of the embodiment of how sort of weird and cocky and shit-talky this team was. And it had Angel, Misery, and Miguel. And Angel and Misery were like these new school Danes. They were extremely mechanically skilled, extremely talented at the game. And they could just do, you know, they were just really, really good at playing core position heroes. And this team that sort of came out of seemingly nowhere got 4th place at DreamHack Winter 2008, 2nd place at Farm for Fame number 3, and 4th place in MYM Pride number 10. And I just want to stress, 2nd place in Farm for Fame number 3 especially. Farm for Fame and MYM Pride in particular, that was sort of like TI back then, right? Like, our TI, the TI of Dota 1, was these shitty online tournaments with like $400 prize pools. But it was like TI because everyone would play them. Every single notable team would play these tournaments. So it's like, if you get 2nd place at Farm for Fame number 3, like, shit, you're the second best team, at least in EU, you know, until 3 months later when there's another tournament. Like, that was a very, 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 very meaningful result. So this was a huge result for them. 4th place at MYM Pride number 10, you know. This team was doing big things. And they had sprung out of seemingly nowhere, and it's like, whoa, who is this Misery guy? Who's this Angel guy? And then they're playing in CDEC, they're playing in the in-house leagues, and they're like dumpstering people. They're playing all sorts of, you know, Misery really, really loved playing Mirana in particular. Really loved that hero, I'm sure he still does. Played like mid Kunkka a lot. You know. And then, of course, MYM starts falling off a bit. It's going downhill. Met, you know, they can't quite get the 1st place. So what happens, you know, it's this thing everyone could see coming, you know, the unthinkable happens. The meeting of the old school and the new school. This new team called Ravens. It was a very strange time, and I think at one point they changed the name to Kingdom. I don't know. I think they might have, but Ravens, at first, it was the mix of MYM and Met. It was old school meets new school, young, talented core players meets the old school Maelk and Mania, the stable, the support players, the brilliant captain. The one thing maybe they were missing, and then Miguel as well, be ashamed not to mention him. And this is like the dream team. The MYM is back. They're the top dog. And this team was doing so good after they formed. And then what's really puzzling is that pretty soon afterwards, Misery leaves, and he joins TLT or Fnatic to play with Loda and Miracle, or Loda and Miracle. I mean, you know, play with Loda and Miracle. Loda's great. He's top level guy in Dota 1, and Miracle's another amazing high level guy in Dota 1. But you know, being a young Danish player and getting to play on on MYM, like, to me, I think there must have been some sort of personality issue there. Maybe he was kicked. I don't buy it. You know, that's like being a young North American guy and getting a shot on EG, getting on EG. It's like the dream, you know. So I have trouble buying that. So I find that a little, you know, this is early on in his career, so maybe he still had some personality. He was known for having the personality issues in his career. I think this is, we can look at this team change here and say, you know, that's probably what happened here, because, you know, who would, and also just MYM in general was such a cool, they were so beloved by everyone who played Dota 1. They were just like, there was this thing called Garena, where you could have any name you wanted, and at the time that was a cool thing. Now in Dota 2 you have any name you wanted, but back then, you know, Warcraft 3 client, you had to pick one name. So in Garena, you could have any name. You could change it. So the amount of games you would play in where there would be some guy with a name like MYM, straight line name, it was a lot of games. Like MYM was really popular. They were like EG now. Like they were the sweetheart team, the beloved team that fans all over the world. People loved MYM. And then he's a Danish guy. So I just don't buy that he left the team cleanly. Anyway, so the last try, or Fnatic, is his next team, playing with Loda and Miracle, and they get scummed out of being sponsored by Fnatic. Fnatic just decides to scum them. They decide they don't want a Dota team anymore, and it's 2010, so they can get away with that. So that's how it goes. That's the end of that, and I think they change their roster a little bit, and they become Ducky's Dream Team, DDT. And they hang around for a bit, eventually they need a new player, they change orgs, they become Lost.eu, and this is where Misery meets Pajkatt for the first time. They pick up this new player called Pajkatt, and they go on, they move on, we're pushing into 2010, TI1, you know, late, now 2011, TI1 comes around, and he goes back to playing with MYM. He returns home. He returns where he should have been all along. TI1 comes around and he plays with Milk and all those guys. He goes back home. And you know what, guys? They actually did really well at TI1. They got 4th place, you know. They didn't win the $1 million. They didn't get in the grand finals. But they got 4th place at TI1. And you know what? They did pretty well. This was the last hurrah for MYM. This was their last breath. This was their last final result as a franchise, as a dynasty of excellence and consistency and consistent results. This was the last great result for Milk and Mania. You know, this was it for them. 4th place TI1, and you know, there's a good way to go out. And Milk stuck around for a little longer, but this truly was it. As far as I'm concerned, this was the end of MYM and the end of an era. So, yeah, that was it for that. And then from then on until 2014, he's on the same team as Pajkatt. You know, they're buddies. You know, he enjoyed playing. So maybe, you know, it was fate that he got kicked off MYM the first time, or decided to leave and play with Loda. I don't know, speculating, but maybe it was fate because he met Pajkatt and then they became great friends, you know, from then on all the way until 2014, just, you know, the same team. First on EG, then on CLG, then on LGD Int, then on Mouse Sports. Then after TI4, they go their separate ways, right? Misery goes to Cloud9, Pajkatt goes to Team Tinker, and it's a huge difference. Misery sees himself have great results. Pajkatt sees himself have very poor results. Misery gets 2nd place with Cloud9. He gets 2nd place at Dota Pit Season 5. These are 2 most notable results. And then they get 5th, 6th at DAC, which is a huge, monstrously good result. Because DAC was actually like a Chinese TI. This particular DAC was a 16-team event. Most of the teams were Chinese. It had it was huge, massive group, massive playoffs, upper bracket, lower bracket. So getting top 6 at that was like getting top 6 at TI. Not quite, you know, not quite the prestige, but it was good. It was almost like a TI. So Cloud9 doing this was like, wow, really, really good job. So now we're heading into, this was the same tournament that Sumail came out and dominated at, and EG won and all that. So they're doing okay, and then they go into TI, and they keep up that level of promise. They deliver on it for a change. They do well for a change. This is the second TI, but anyway. They do well in the groups, you know. They actually do well in the groups. They start off in the upper bracket. They do well enough in the groups to earn the playoff, you know, they earn the upper bracket advantage. And then they lose 2-0 to CDEC, goes on to the finals, and then they lose 2-0 to Vici Gaming, the 4th place team in the lower bracket. So, yeah. I mean, maybe, you know, if you're good, it shouldn't matter who you play, right? But it helps if you don't play the 2nd and the 4th place team for your first 2 games in the main event. It helps. So, tough results for them, you know. Tough go. They did well in the groups. They got the upper bracket spot. And then they just, you know, they just hit a wall. They hit CDEC and Vici. So, that's tough, man, you know. Not a great TI for Misery. Aside from TI1, he has not really had a strong finish at TI yet. Gets picked up by Team Secret after this. Goes to 2nd place at the Frankfurt Major. 1st place at the Shanghai Major, playing offlane. This is the real breakthrough of his career. This is the best team he's ever been on. Everything's great. He's so happy. You know, this puppy god from Dota 1 wants to play with him. Wow, you know, and we're winning together. Everything's great, and he gets kicked, you know, a few months before TI. Same along with Weehaw. Devastating. You know, devastating. You know, I can't only imagine. So they go on to form Digital Chaos, the 2 of them together, and then their team consists of Soxa and Moo as well along them. Like, you know, speaking as someone who does know those players, okay, we can look in hindsight and say, hey, those were 2 pretty good players, but at the time, you know, you're like, who the fuck, like, Soxa and Moo, like, these guys are so fucked, they're gonna go bottom 4, it's gonna be humiliating, they're not gonna win a game. Oh, 2nd place Group B. Oh, wow. Yeah, okay, they lose upper bracket versus Wings. They're in the lower bracket. No, this is where they belong, the lower bracket. This is where they should have been all along. Oh no, they go all the way through the lower bracket, including beating PPD ZG in a very, very close 3-game series. They go to the grand finals. Yeah, they do great. You know, Misery, I'd say his signature hero for this event was Kunkka. He played it a lot. And he found himself like a sort of a high-skill position 5 player, position 5 hero that he can really make skilled plays on while still buying all the wards and doing that typical sort of stuff. Soxa played a lot of Shadow Demon, so it was sort of like Shadow Demon Kunkka was their desired pick. And that was their real bread and butter for that event. And yeah, and I think just looking at the scope of Misery's career overall, ever since TI4, he's only gotten better and better and better and better. He's actually gotten better with time. He's aged well. And he's also shown that Pajkatt has shown at least that he's had the best results ever when he's played with Misery. And now you add PPD into that mix, maybe he can elevate both of them, like the same way that Puppy elevated Misery to fantastic results. Although didn't need him at TI6, did he? But maybe PPD elevates the both of them to 1st place at TI, you know? That'll be very interesting to see. So, my expectations for this team, I'd say they're pretty high. I think they can be very good. I think there's going to be some growing pains. You know, I think they're in the honeymoon period right now. And I think if they can make it through that tough period that comes afterwards and grind through that, get to the really, you know, get to like the 6-month point, you know, maybe they can get into like March, you know, they can make it, they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. June is there, July is just around the corner. Like, they can push through to there. And I'd say my expectations are pretty high for this team. That's assuming no one gets kicked. You know, I think a lot of this team, how well they do is going to depend on if CCnC turns out to be a Tier 1 mid player or not. Is PPD truly the brilliant captain that he's been propped up to be? Or is he overrated? You know, we're going to have to find out, aren't we? We're just going to have to follow the progress of OpTic Gaming over the course of the fall of this coming year. So yeah, that's it. That's the video.